Now live, I'm Robin Lundberg, he's Ryan Aselta, and we're with former Pro Bowler Tiki Barber.
Tiki, let's get right to it. Big week in the NFL, and we'll start with the Eagles. The big news coming out of Philadelphia. The Eagles win the NFC East, huge win on the road in L.A., huge cost, though. Carson Wentz goes down. It's likely a torn ACL. Kind of still waiting for the MRI to confirm that this morning. Let's look ahead. If Wentz is done for the season, can the Eagles still win the NFC and possibly go to the Super Bowl?
I think they can, because I think we're a little bit fooled by who the Eagles are based on how amazing Carson Wentz has been. Clearly, he was leading, if not in the top 2 or 3 in the MVP race this year because of how well he's playing. He's 33 touchdowns already, which is leading the NFL. It's obviously a Philadelphia Eagles record, and there's still 3 games to go. He won't go farther than that, obviously. But what they've really done well is run the ball. They're number 2 in the league in running the ball and stop the run. They're number 1 in the league defensively in stopping the run. So the core of this team is what's led to all this success. Carson Wentz has just been an excellent asset complementary part to that. Now, here's the thing. We saw Nick Foles in 2013 throw for 27 touchdowns and only 2 interceptions in that unbelievably magical year that he had. And in Carson Wentz's stead yesterday, he threw a couple of really nice throws, including the one to ice it to Nelson Aguilar, where he threw him open. He was tightly covered. So if Nick Foles can just be a stopgap for a little while and let this team do what they've done best all year long, which is run the ball and stop the run, then absolutely they can compete in the NFC and still win it.
So there's some sad Eagles fans today saying, so you're saying there's a chance.
There is a chance. I mean, fundamentally, this team is very sound. And we ignore it because we just like talking about quarterbacks. But this team has all of the components in place to be successul even without Carson Wentz.
Are they still the favorite, though, or did the NFC just get evened up quite a bit?
It got closer, at least in our minds. And again, we won't know this really until we see Carson Wentz or Nick Foles next week take some snaps and be the starter and see if he actually can lead this team the same way that Carson Wentz did.
Of course, Wentz a tough loss for the Eagles, but an ugly scene in the 49ers-Texans game as Houston quarterback Tom Savage took a hit that left him on the ground twitching. Somehow he was allowed to re-enter the game before being removed again and diagnosed with a concussion. Here was head coach Bill O'Brien's explanation.
He got hit on that one play in the end zone, I think, or backed up in our end. And, obviously the spotter wanted him evaluated. We evaluated him. At that time, made the determination to put him, that he was okay. Not me, obviously the evaluators made the determination to put him back in the game. And, then he went back in the game, and he came out, and they evaluated him a little bit more just because of what they saw, and that's where it's at.
Now, O'Brien clearly tried to distance himself from this decision. Right. But how can anyone take the NFL's concussion protocol seriously?
You can't. I mean, look, you see this every week, actually. You see a guy go down where he either bangs his head or he gets drilled, and, he lays there acting like, oh, my rib hurts, and he gets up, and he acts like he's okay. These concussions happen all the time. These spotters that are supposed to be around aren't actually doing their job well enough. And if anybody thought that Tom Savage wasn't concussed with him staring, blankly into the sky with his hands twitching and him not being able to move, you're blind, right? And so in that instance, that's a clear concussion. There's no doubt about it, right? A little tap of your helmet gives you a concussion. When you smash against the ground and your body is twitching uncontrollably, take his helmet and take him out of the game. There should be no chance that he comes back in the game. The fact that he was evaluated on the sideline and then given clearance basically almost immediately is a disgrace to the process. And everyone around this game should be ashamed. I know Coach O'Brien is distancing himself, but he saw that play. He should have known better. He's been around this long enough to know that Tom Savage was heavily compromised and should not have been back in that football game.
It looked like he almost had a seizure at that point.
It did look like
it was pretty clear what was going on the field.
I don't know, how many times have you seen this guy? Guys get knocked out and they can't pull their arms down, right? They're stuck like tonic, almost like they're having a tonic-clonic seizure, to your point, where they can't control their body. And when you stop being able to control your body, you shouldn't be playing the game.
Amazing stuff. Well, in the AFC, the Steelers, they locked up the AFC North title on Sunday Night Football with a 39-38 win over the Ravens. Huge night for Ben Roethlisberger, who's our adrenaline performer, presented by Toyota. Let's go places. Roethlisberger completes a career-high 44 of 66 passes for 506 yards and 2 touchdowns. Big Ben becomes the first player in NFL history to throw for over 500 yards, 3 times. Tiki, Roethlisberger leads the league in passing yards. Is he playing himself into the MVP conversation now?
You kind of have to say, yeah, right? They keep winning, and they're not they're playing. I don't want to say down because it's a division opponent they played the last couple of weeks with the Bengals, who they're superior than, but it was a tight game. Same thing this week against the Ravens. I think they're a much better team, top to bottom than but they play to them, or they allow them to stay in the games or get back into the games, and they go these stretches where they just disappear. What was that stretch right after halftime? They had 11 plays in 3 series, and obviously no points, and the Ravens took the lead. But we know this about Ben because we've seen it so many times. He will keep you in a game and bring you back. And when it comes down to it, Antonio Brown, they're going to find a man coverage at some point. They're going to exploit it. He's going to go 34 yards like he did last night and make a big play and put them in position to kick the game-winning field goal. So you have to consider Big Ben because of the streak that they've been on. Was it 8 in a row that they've won now? And the fact that they can beat almost anybody. I think a long way towards his candidacy. I don't think he's thinking about it, but we are. Will happen next weekend when they play the New England Patriots and the team that they've had circled on their calendar, according even to their head coach.
Yeah, they talked about it plenty.
For the last month and a half. So next week is a big week for a lot of teams, especially both the Pats and the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Now, speaking of some guys who are pretty valuable to their team, Cam Newton would be another one. Many had the Vikings sort of pegged as the best team in the NFC, but Cam was able to put together a couple of spectacular plays to help the Panthers beat them. Is his big playability good enough for the Panthers to be a legitimate threat to emerge in the conference?
They need more. I mean, yeah, it's exciting to see every now and then. They had a big play from Jonathan Stewart as well. You got to cover 0. They're trying to stop a 3rd and 1, get a poor gap fit, and he goes 60 yards for a touchdown. Same thing happens on a 3rd down situation. Cam Newton gets free, gets all, goes, what did he, that was a 50-something yard run as well, gets it down into the tight red zone. But fundamentally, this team has flaws, right? They don't complete passes to their wide receivers. I mean, every now and then, Devin Funchess makes a great catch. Christian McCaffrey might be their leading receiver coming out of the backfield. So it's disjointed the way that they're playing, but they have a superiorly athletic quarterback who makes plays. Now, the problem is, if you figure out a way and completely focus on shutting down Cam Newton, who picks up the slack, right? So while I see where they are, I mean, they've won 9 games already. They're sitting atop tied the South with the Saints. But I don't know if I trust them yet, even though they're likely to make the postseason.
Carolina's going to take on Green Bay in Week 15. And let's talk about the Pack.
Yeah.
They have survived without Aaron Rodgers. They just barely get by the Browns. And all of a sudden, it looks like Rodgers is coming back. What could this do for Green Bay's playoff chances? The boost of, if he's cleared, he could be back on the field on Sunday.
Well, I mean, obviously it's going to give them an emotional lift. I mean, it's Aaron Rodgers. He's amazing. He's the best quarterback in football. And even when he's broken, collarbone, he's out there throwing it around on the scout team a couple of weeks ago, and guys are feeling excited about him. Do I think he should come back? No, I don't, because I don't like the risk, the Tony Romo risk. And Tony did the same thing a few years ago, and he broke his collarbone again. Not that it matters because it'll heal before next season, but you don't want your star, I mean, really the star of the league, to continually be hurt. And can they make the postseason? Yeah, but it's really tight. We just talked about the Panthers. Obviously, the Falcons are also in play here. The Rams and the Seahawks, whoever the loser of that is going to be competing for the wild card spot as well. So it's really tight, and they have a tough road. Carolina this week, and then they play, obviously, the Minnesota Vikings again the following week, and then they get the division game against the Lions. So it's going to be tough for this Packers team, but I think he will play, and I think he gives them a lot of hope.
Things got testy at the end of the Seahawks loss to the Jaguars, including a moment where it appeared Seattle defensive end Quentin Jefferson might go into the stands after some fans were throwing things at him. Afterwards, he had this to say: "I'm a human just like anybody else. I'm a man just like the other man in the stands. I'm not going to let somebody disrespect me, throw a beer on me just because I'm playing football. I'm still a human being. I'm not going to let somebody disrespect me like that. Is this a worse look for the player or the fans?
It's obviously a worse look for the fan, but who cares? We don't know who that fan is. We're never gonna see that fan. Maybe they'll find him and ban him from the stadium, but he'll be forgotten in a week. He's insignificant in the conversation. Quentin Jefferson's got to know better. He's got to know that the eye is on me, the spotlight is on me. And yeah, I know you were upset, and it was an emotional moment after that ejection of Sheldon Richardson from that Michael Bennett and Leonard Fournette play a couple of plays earlier. He gets tossed out. You know, fans on the road are going to be confrontational and vicious and say things and do things. You got to be a bigger person and walk away from it because this doesn't look good for you. It doesn't look good for the composure of your team. And hell, even Pete Carroll got involved in this, running out in the field and getting a 15-yard penalty. I think it's indicative of what's kind of wrong with the Seahawks team. They don't have the composure that they used to have. They've always had this emotion, right? But there's been a composure that's been wrapped around it, and they don't seem to have that anymore.
Fine line.
Yeah, it's a very fine line. I mean, you toe it because it makes you good. It gives you an edge when games are tight and lets you get over that hump sometimes. But if it tips just a little bit too far and gets out of control like it did last night in a game that was lost already, you end up hurting yourself down the line.
All right, 3 weeks to go. We've been talking playoffs probably prematurely for a few weeks now, but hey, it's time. 3 weeks to go. Let's assess the chances of making noise in the playoffs for a few of these teams here. NFC West, Rams or Seahawks?
See, this is hard. So I had to write all these down because you had to look who they play next. Now, the Rams and the Seahawks play this weekend. But after that, the Rams have the Titans and the 49ers, both winnable games, I think. The Seahawks have the Cowboys, which are always hard because they'll start fighting, and the Arizona Cardinals. And so to me, I see it as the Rams. They score a ton of points. We've seen the Seahawks be compromised offensively sometimes. I mean, the Jaguars had their way with them for most of that game, even though it got tight. So I'm going to say the Rams are going to come out of this division. I think they score too much, and their defense is actually still really good as well.
In the AFC, you just mentioned the Jaguars beating the Seahawks. Better chance the Jags or the Chargers, who are rolling?
Well, I think the Jags are going to win the division, and the Chargers, I think, may also win the division. So this is probably both. The winner of the Chargers and the Kansas City game this week has the edge to get into the postseason. And I like the Chargers to do that. Kansas City had a little bit of a rebound week this week against the Raiders, but I still don't love them and where they've been. I think getting off the slide was a big positive. But the Chargers have been fantastic. And most importantly, Phillip Rivers has been balling like crazy. That Thanksgiving game against the Cowboys, threw for 400-something yards. They had almost 500 yards of total offense this past weekend. So I like the Chargers to win this division. I also like the Jaguars to win their division. So both of them are likely to get in the postseason.
How about a very crowded NFC South? You've got the Falcons, Saints, and Panthers. To me, on the surface, Tiki, possibly the best team in the division could get shut out of the playoffs in an Atlanta team here.
I mean, you're right. You're absolutely right. They're finally starting to play a little bit better. They got to do it more consistently, but they have a tough road because they're playing. All these teams are playing each other, right? So it's a lot of division games. The Buccaneers have a chance to be the spoiler as they play each of these teams the last 3 weeks of the season. But I like the Saints to come out of the division as the winner of the division. They've just been consistently too good. These last two losses notwithstanding. But I do think that one or maybe even both of these other teams can get into the postseason as wild cards as well. The Falcons, you were just mentioning, they have the tiebreaker on everybody outside of the division. They already beat the Packers. They already beat the Lions. They already beat the Seahawks. They already beat the Cowboys. So they have the tiebreaker from the head-to-head matchup, which is a scheduling quirk. They've played every team that they need to beat to get into the postseason, but they still have to find a way to win a couple of these games down the stretch because I think if they're under 10 wins, they're not going to be in the conversation.
Circling back to the Carson Wentz injury, Eagles or Vikings, better chance?
I'm gonna say the Eagles. I think fundamentally, as I mentioned, they're just powerful. Like they run the ball really well with LeGarrette Blount and Jay Ajayi and Smallwood as well. If Nick Foles can just be calm Nick Foles and not I'm going to make mistake Nick Foles, he doesn't need to be Carson Wentz. Is basically the point. He just needs to be a game manager who doesn't try to do too much.
May your optimism make it to the city of Philadelphia. Thanks,
hey, Pennsylvania has both teams. Both teams have already clinched, right? Steelers and the Eagles.
Well, baseball's winter meetings kicked off this weekend with a bang as the Yankees swoop in and pull off a trade for Giancarlo Stanton. I'll welcome in Sports Illustrated senior writer Ben Roethlisberger to get his thoughts. And Ben, Stanton waives his no-trade clause to go to New York. On the surface, the Yankees don't end up giving up a ton here. How big of a win is this for the Yankees, who were already just one win away from the World Series a year ago?
Well, it's an enormous win for the Yankees. Look, the best way to look at the Giancarlo Stanton trade is that it was really a free agent signing. The Yankees essentially signed a 28-year-old reigning NL MVP for a 10-year, $265 million contract with no competition. There was no one else really bidding them up due to Giancarlo Stanton's no-trade clause. Their calculus was, do we sign him now, or do we wait till next winter with this great free agent class that's going to include Bryce Harper and Manny Machado at its top, and probably be bid up on those guys much more than the price that we'd have to pay to get Stanton, plus these two lower-level prospects. It's a business win, and when you certainly look at the lineup it's created, it's a big on-field win as well for New York.
Talking about that lineup, Aaron Judge and Stanton combined for 111 home runs last year. You do have Gregorius still in the lineup, Gary Sanchez. Is any lineup even close to the Yankees right now?
Well, yes. I mean, certainly a lot of clubs are going to try to scramble to catch up with them, most of all the Red Sox, who are probably looking on in horror at what happened this weekend in New York. But look, don't discount the Astros, right? The champion Astros. They outscored the Yankees lineup last year. Perhaps they don't have dual 60 home run threats because nobody does. But what they do have is a very well-balanced, powerful lineup in its own right, and one that doesn't strike out an awful lot at all. They struck out the second fewest times in the league last year. That's a very difficult combination, as we saw all through October. It'll certainly be a clash of styles whenever these two face off. But, you know, one thing you can't expect is a lot of runs one way or the other.
Now, what about the impact on the sport? I always argue that when the Yankees are really good, it's good for baseball because they have the biggest fan base, the most people that root against them, and they're the one team that maybe can draw national interest themselves. Is this good for baseball?
Yes and no. I think yes for all the reasons that you just stated. Certainly no for the competitive balance of the sport. It seemed as if we had just gone through an era in which everybody had a shot. You know, we saw the Royals win a championship. It seemed like those mid to low level market teams might have a shot at a championship. Well, we just finished a playoffs in which the final four teams came from the four largest metropolitan areas in the country. And now it seems this offseason the rich will only get richer. You do have to wonder if we're headed towards another era of competitive imbalance in baseball, which is probably not good overall.
All right, Ben, I'm going to take my team allegiance out of the equation, which you know about. We're not going to talk about that. Let's throw that out the window here, but I got to ask you this question. Derek Jeter retires as an all-time Yankee great, takes over the Marlins, and his first move after laying off some team employees is to trade his biggest star to the Yankees. Is there any scenario here where this move does not smell a little bit fishy?
I think it doesn't smell fishy, actually. I think that Jeter's relationship with the Yankees is kind of improbably strained at this point. We know he tried to trade him to the Cardinals, tried to trade him to the Giants. Giancarlo Stanton exercised his no-trade clause. In truth, there was probably no way he was going anywhere but Los Angeles and New York. If you know him, I do not think this is a gift from Jeter to the Yankees. I think that Jeter's really trying to be a sensible, pragmatic businessman. That's certainly clashing with his image as the captain in New York. I think he's trying to put this organization down in Miami on a path towards financial health, but he's going to get an awful lot of bad press along the way, and it could be a half a decade or more of this.
Meanwhile, the other big move, Shohei Ohtani, has made his decision. He signed with the Angels. Why them? And with his talents both on the mound and at the plate, how do you see the Angels utilizing him?
Why them? Well, it makes a lot of sense when you think about it, right? I mean, he apparently wanted a West Coast team in a quieter type of market. That's certainly Anaheim. And he also is a guy who could push a team that's been treading water over the top into the playoffs, you know? Mike Trout could only do so much by himself. But when you add a guy in Shohei Ohtani, who, if you believe the scouts, is a superstar caliber player. He could account for enough wins on either side of the ball to make a team that has not won a single playoff game in Mike Trout's tenure a contender for real. And I think that they certainly also promised him that he would be able to do what he wanted to do, which was both pitch and hit. I think we'll see him take a lot of at-bats at designated hitter, which makes you wonder what they're going to do with Albert Pujols. That's maybe a question for tomorrow. And start, once a week. One interesting wrinkle is perhaps they'll try to put in a 6-man rotation, which is what they use in Japan, where starters use once a week. So he gets one start a week, maybe one day off a week, and the rest of the time he's at DH. It'll be a fascinating experiment, no matter how it turns out.
Ben, the winter meetings are going to run through Thursday. A few big-name free agents still on the open market. Yu Darvish, J.D. Martinez, to name a few. Who's the next big gun to sign here?
Right. Well, it seems as if we were off to a bit of a delayed start while everybody was waiting to see where the real top dogs were going to go. Those are Ohtani and Stanton. Back-to-back days, those guys found new homes. So now the floodgates are going to open. I think the next guy to go is number 1 on my list, my annual list of top 50 free agents. That's J.D. Martinez, the Diamondback slugger. This guy's quietly emerged as, if not perhaps Giancarlo Stanton, as one of the best sluggers in the league. I think that his market's going to be very heavy, especially for those teams that came up short in their pursuit of Giancarlo Stanton. I expect the Giants to have some interest, the Cardinals certainly to have some interest, but I expect the team that's going to have more interest than any other is going to be the Red Sox as they try to keep pace with the Yankees in the AL East.
Lots of moves still to be made. Ben Ryder all over it as usual. Ben, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, guys.
All right, let's shift to the NBA now, where the hottest team in the league, the Rockets, will go for their 10th straight win tonight. Houston wrapped up a very successful trip out west, 3-0 on the West Coast over the weekend. Now a league best 20-4 on the season. Robin, when you talk about the Rockets here, is it time to start considering them in that same category as the Warriors at this point?
Well, right now, they are in the same category as the Warriors. They've been defending well, and they're scoring, of course, which we never doubted. But when you look forward, the question is, can they guard the Warriors in a playoff series? They've gotten a little bit better on that end. P.J. Tucker has added a lot of versatility to that roster, and D'Antoni, not afraid to go small. He's played him at center. And then the big question with Paul and Harden has worked out great because they've been very good when on the court together, and they've been exemplary when on the court separately. So the Rockets never miss a beat. When Harden sits down, Paul runs that show, and of course, vice versa. So as of right now, the Rockets are playing as well as anyone. They have to prove it in the postseason.
Yeah, I think a lot remains to be seen. I agree with you. Right now, yes, but we've only seen them go head-to-head once. That was opening night. We don't get them again until January 4th, so that's coming up. But I was surprised at their defensive efficiency. 5th in the league, Golden State 3rd, so two teams that clearly play defense. 1 and 2 offensive efficiency in the league. My question is, with a healthy Golden State, when Steph comes back, Draymond's been nursing some injuries as well. A healthy Golden State against Houston. Who's the extra guy who steps up for Houston? Obviously, James Harden, Chris Paul are there. Is it Gordon? Is he the guy who is the difference maker, or even just the equalizer come March, April, May?
Yeah, from a scoring standpoint, it's going to have to be Eric Gordon. I mean, they've had a bunch of guys play well for them. Clint Capella's had a great season, but Gordon's been the one to provide that punch off the bench, and he's going to have to be the one, if you're going to be in a shootout with Golden State, who's going to have to give you 20-plus consistently. Meanwhile, when you're talking about the Rockets and how well they're playing, there's some speculation LeBron might consider Houston in the offseason. Does it make sense for him to sign there?
No, absolutely not. I think this is getting comical. Every time a team gets hot, it's like, is this the good fit for LeBron when he becomes a free agent? I think the best fit for LeBron and his legacy is Cleveland. Remain where he is, keep building, playing pseudo GM and forward / everything on the Cavs, and keep building to compete with the Warriors and the Rockets and the Spurs. I think he's got to stay in Cleveland. I think Cleveland, Robin, right now, I don't know how you feel about this. I think they're undervalued at this point. They reeled off 13-game winning streak. They still haven't brought Isaiah Thomas even into the mix of this team. What we see right now in December with Cleveland, we're going to see something completely different. I'm assuming a much higher caliber come March and April when Thomas is back. And LeBron is the one who's building this. Keep building, stay where you are, win number 4 with the Cavs.
The way LeBron's shooting right now, almost anything is possible. And you're right, the Cavs are going to get better. They're still right there with Boston as the 2 teams I think that could emerge from the East. And I'll, until I see otherwise, make them the favorite considering LeBron has that residency there in the NBA Finals from the Eastern Conference. But if we're looking at possible fits, in one way, it doesn't make sense because it's another ball handler on a team that already has 2 guys who handle the ball. I mean, what was the big question when Paul went there? How can he and Harden coexist? You add LeBron into that mix, it's still a question. But on the other hand, he and Paul, LeBron are very good friends. And if LeBron's looking to phase into the latter aspect of his career as more of a big man, as the guy who's setting the screens, maybe instead of the guy who's using the screens, that could work out with him at the power forward spot in Houston. And if you believe in the idea of talent wins out no matter what, not many teams, maybe even including Golden State, would have the talent level of Houston if you put LeBron there.
Are you convinced, though, that LeBron at any point is going to be ready to phase down like you're talking about? I mean, Michael Jordan really never accepted that role. You think he's going to go to another team and not be the top dog? I think there's certain guys in the history of the sports, they're the top dog, and then they're retired.
Well, I mean more adapt than phase out. Just adapt the way he's playing, play bigger rather than more like a guard because he'd be playing alongside those guys. But, with the number of possessions that D'Antoni's offense generates, maybe there is enough basketball to go around.
First it was the Lakers rumored, then the Sixers rumored. Now it's Houston. I guess we'll see.
The Champions League round of 16 draw was upon us earlier this morning. To break down the matchups, we have the co-host of SITV's Planet Football Show, Luis Miguel Echegaray. Luis, let's start with the matchup we're all looking forward to watching, Real Madrid versus PSG. Which powerhouse will find their way into the quarterfinals?
Hey, Robin. First of all, thanks for having us, guys. I've been up since like 5:45 in the morning, all right? So I'm on my 5th cup of coffee. So
plenty of time to analyze.
Okay, so we'll talk about the Champions League draw, which any soccer fan can agree is the most exciting draw we have seen in a long time. Real Madrid and PSG is obviously the main one that everybody's going to be talking about. This one's going to be interesting, I think. I think it's going to be, one where it's not really about the creative problems offensively, but it's really about what's going to happen at the back. As we know, Real Madrid hasn't exactly been at its best this season, due to the defensive, frailties of the team. I think losing Pepe in the summer was a big deal. And from the PSG point of view, they're doing their thing in Ligue 1, but let's remember, it is the French league, and, they really haven't been tested defensively. So I think that's going to be a key thing. I do see PSG taking this one just because of the pure creative talent that they have up front, and I don't think Ronaldo could do it all by himself.
I don't know about you, but Luis looks wide awake to me, Robin. He's fine right now. Well, let's go from one Spanish juggernaut to the next.
Please.
5, yeah. Barcelona finds themselves with a difficult matchup of their own as they drew Chelsea. And we know that Messi has struggled against Chelsea in the past as he's faced them 8 times and recorded 0 goals. What are the chances that Barca loses to the Blues?
Well, I mean, there's always a chance, right? I mean, this is an interesting matchup, too, because it's actually an intriguing classic rivalry between these two teams. They've actually met 15 times in the Champions League. It's become kind of like a cool Champions League derby, if you want to call it that. One of my favorite memories was in 2005 when Ronaldinho scored one of the best goals I've ever seen at Stamford Bridge, and Chelsea still won that. I think that many people were questioning Barcelona in the summer. The departure of Neymar didn't really justify who was coming in, like Dembele, who's injured right now, and Paulinho coming in as well. But at the same time, I think that Antonio Conte's Chelsea has really, especially from what happened now against losing against West Ham, Antonio Conte now realizes that this Chelsea team needs to prioritize the Champions League. I think, like Jonathan Wilson said, in his article earlier today, we really have to understand that Chelsea's now going to focus on the Champions League more so than ever. I see Chelsea giving Barcelona a few problems. My biggest worry is going to be how they deal not so much with Messi in itself, which is obviously he's the biggest problem, but how they deal at the back in the midfield. Barcelona love to keep the ball, and if Chelsea don't pressure and don't attack as much, then we'll see what happens. I do see Barcelona taking this one just about, though, just about.
When we look ahead here, is the chance that we don't see Ronaldo or Messi in the round of 8?
I see PSG taking this one, so I really don't think that Real Madrid probably might not win this one, just again for the reasons that I said. PSG is just too good, and it's not like Real Madrid have been firing at all cylinders. I do see Barcelona having an easier time, for a lack of a better word, but yeah, I mean, one or the other might not make it. I think Real Madrid will lose, and Chelsea will lose to Barcelona.
Which contender do you think received the most favorable draw?
I mean, you know, I don't want to give any disrespect to Basel, but I think Manchester City definitely had the easier route. Basel, the Swiss champions, this is actually the first time they're coming back in the knockout stages in the last 3 years. They do have a history of eliminating Premier League competition. They did it in 2012, 2013 against Manchester United. And they did it last year in the quarterfinals against Tottenham in the Europa League. So they can do it, but this is Manchester City. It's creating headline after headline, winning its 14th match in a row in the Premiership, en route to be the undefeated in the Premier League. The 11-point gap in the Premier League is going to be a big factor, because I think that Pep Guardiola is going to rest some key players in easier matches in the Premier League, and so he can put all his focus in the Champions League. I think this is the easiest one for any team.
You mentioned that Premier League. Of the 5 Premier League teams that remain, 3 of them are clear favorites to make it to the round of 8. Luis, are we finally seeing the return of English dominance in the Champions League?
I mean, I don't want to. I mean, it's already happened, right? I mean, you know, we've already gotten what we wanted from the Premier League side going into the last 16. Now comes the real test. Now we'll see what happens and how far they can go. I mean, every single team that's gone through has the capability of advancing, right? But it's more about what they do in this crucial stages. This is where you're going to see the difference between a good team that made it to the knockout stages and a team that deserves to be in the quarterfinals, the semifinals, and the final. I do see a Premier League side going all the way to the final. I don't know if I see anybody else going further than that.
Good stuff. Planet Football's Luis Miguel Echegaray. Thanks for being with us as always, man.
Thank you. I'm going to get my 6th coffee now.
Number 6. Go for it.
Well, that's our show for today. We
You
don't
need
need
another
any
cup of coffee?
not to get through the rest of this, but you know, maybe tomorrow morning, because you can catch us at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. And make sure you follow SI Now Live on Twitter for the latest videos and updates. Have a good one.